No, I can't do that, Olivia cried, her voice choked with tears. How could I have killed my husband? I loved Uche more than life itself. I would never harm him. But the villagers had already made up their minds. They looked at her with disgust and anger, their hearts hardened by William's deceit. Once upon a time in Umr, a close-knit village surrounded by whispering forests and lush green fields, there lived a couple named Uche and Olivia. Their love for each other was deep and pure, like a river that never dried. Uche was a kind-hearted young man, known for his cheerful spirit and hardworking nature. Olivia, his wife, was gentle and caring, admired by many for her beauty and grace. Their love was like a beautiful song that could be heard all across the village. They spent their days together, laughing and dreaming about their future. The people of Umidara knew of their love and often saw them hand in hand, sharing moments that seemed almost magical. But in every tale of love, there lurks a shadow. In this story, that shadow was Uche's own brother, William. William had always envied his younger brother's happiness. He watched with burning jealousy as Uche and Olivia grew closer each day. It was more than he could bear. Every smile they shared, every glance filled with love, twisted his heart into knots of bitterness. He would sit outside his home, watching them with eyes darkened by envy. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Olivia brought exciting news to Uche. Her heart beat with joy as she placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "Uche, my love, I'm pregnant." Uche's eyes lit up with joy. He lifted her into his arms and spun her around, laughing with delight. "Oh, Olivia, my love," he cried. "You have made me one of the happiest men in all of Umidara. I promise, I'll buy you the most beautiful wrapper on the next market day, to show everyone what a wonderful wife you are." They spent that evening together, dreaming of the child who would soon join their little family. They talked about names and wondered if it would be a boy or a girl. Uche vowed to be a loving father, and Olivia's heart was full, knowing she would raise their child in a home filled with love. But the joy did not last. 3 months into Olivia's pregnancy, an unimaginable tragedy struck. One morning, as the village slowly came to life, Uche stepped out of their home, ready to begin his day. Suddenly, his body swayed, and he collapsed to the ground. His heart stopped in an instant, and he died there, leaving behind his beloved wife and their unborn child. Olivia rushed to his side, her cries piercing the air as she held him close, hoping it was just a bad dream. But Uche was gone. Her heart shattered into pieces as she held him, her tears soaking his lifeless face. Before she could even comprehend her loss, William burst out of his home, screaming, "Abomination! Abomination! She has killed him! Olivia has killed her own husband." The villagers, drawn by his shouts, gathered around them. Murmurs filled the air, whispers of suspicion and fear. They looked at Olivia, who was clutching her husband's body, her face pale with grief and confusion. "Olivia, did you really kill Uche?" one of the elders asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "No," Olivia cried, her voice choked with tears. "How could I kill the love of my life? I loved Uche more than life itself. I would never harm him." But William had already poisoned the minds of the villagers with his lies. They turned their backs on her, unable to hear her desperate pleas. To them, she was guilty, her innocence clouded by William's poisonous words. Olivia's heart ached as she looked around, hoping someone would believe her, but she saw only accusing eyes and distrustful faces. The village elders, swayed by William's influence, declared that if Olivia was truly innocent, she should spend 3 days sleeping beside Uche's corpse. It was their custom, they claimed, a way to prove her purity and her love. Olivia had no choice. She had to prove herself, even if it meant spending 3 sleepless nights with the cold body of her beloved husband. They placed Uche's body in a small hut, and Olivia was forced to stay there with him, her only company the silence and her grief. Each night, she sat by his side, whispering to him, her voice filled with sorrow. "Why did you leave me, Uche?" she murmured, her tears flowing freely. "I don't know how to go on without you. They don't believe me, Uche. They think I hurt you, but you know I loved you." For 3 nights, she sat in the darkness, talking to him, crying, and praying that somehow he would come back to her. But on the third day, when she emerged from the hut, weak and hollow, the village elders still looked at her with doubt in their eyes. William, seeing her fragile state, approached her with a twisted smile. "Olivia," he said softly, "you don't have to suffer alone. Uche is gone, but I am still here. Marry me, and I'll make sure you're taken care of." Olivia stared at him in horror. She knew now that William's heart was as dark as the night, filled with greed and jealousy. Her voice was barely a whisper as she said, "I would rather be alone forever than betray Uche's memory. I will never marry you, William." Fury burned in William's eyes. He had hoped her despair would weaken her, but Olivia's refusal only deepened his hatred. He turned away, his mind plotting revenge. If she would not be his, he would make her life a living nightmare. William, driven by his obsession, visited the village's native doctor, a man known for his dark ways and fearsome magic. Together, they devised a wicked plan to get rid of Olivia themselves forever. William knew the village's greatest treasure was a golden idol, a relic said to bring prosperity and protection. He and the native doctor agreed to steal it and plant it in Olivia's room, framing her for the theft. A few days later, the village was in turmoil. The native doctor announced that the golden idol was missing, stolen from its sacred place. Panic spread through Umadura, as the villagers feared the wrath of the gods. The elders called for a search, and one by one, they went from house to house, looking for the stolen treasure. When they reached Olivia's home, she welcomed them, confused by the commotion. She stood aside as they searched, never expecting what was to come. Suddenly, one of the elders lifted the golden idol from a hidden corner of her room. Gasps of horror filled the air, and Olivia felt the world spin around her. "Oh no, I didn't take it," she cried, her voice shaking with desperation. "I don't know how it got here. I am not a thief." But the villagers had already made up their minds. They looked at her with disgust and anger, their hearts hardened by William's deceit. "Thief," they shouted. "You have brought shame upon us. You have angered the gods." Her pleas fell on deaf ears as they dragged her to the village square. The elders pronounced their judgment. Olivia would be buried alive. That is her punishment for stealing the sacred treasure and for the death of her husband. As they led her to the place where she would be buried, Olivia struggled, her swollen belly a reminder of the life growing inside her. She cried out, "Please, my unborn child is innocent. Have mercy on my baby." But her cries were met with silence. The villagers' faces were set with determination, their minds poisoned by William's lies. They threw her into the shallow grave, ignoring her desperate pleas. As they began to shovel dirt over her, Olivia looked at them, her face twisted with pain and betrayal. With her last breath, she cursed the village, her voice echoing through the still air. "You have wronged me, Omanra. I will return for justice. My child and I will not rest until we have taken our revenge on each and every one of you. This village will know not peace." And with that, the last of the earth covered her, silencing her forever. The village of Umadara knew no rest from the moment Olivia's soul rose from her shallow grave. Bound by pain and fueled by vengeance, her spirit wandered the village day and night, searching for justice, for herself, her unborn child, and her beloved husband. Every night, the haunting began as shadows stretched across the land, and Olivia's sorrowful voice filled the village square. She would sit at the heart of the village, where the elders had condemned her, rocking gently back and forth, singing a melody so mournful that even the animals fell silent. Her voice drifted through the air, a chilling reminder of the injustice that had been done. It reached every ear, turning dreams into nightmares. Even those who had cast stones at her felt a chill that would not leave them, a feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. But the true horror fell upon William, the man who had stolen everything from her. Every night, Olivia's spirit would appear in front of his door, her face twisted in sorrow and pain. He would stumble out of bed, his heart pounding, only to see her standing there, her hollow eyes fixed on him, a silent accusation that cut into his soul. His heart pounded as she reached toward him, and screaming, he would flee into the night, his cowardice laid bare for all to see. William could not escape her. Whether he hid in his home or ran to the edge of the village, Olivia's spirit found him. Each night she would come, more persistent, her voice calling to him in whispers that only he could hear. She would remind him of his lies, his greed, his twisted desire, and the betrayal that had torn her life apart. William's mind began to unravel, and fear sank its claws into him so deeply that he could hardly sleep, hardly eat, hardly think. But Olivia's torment did not end with William. Soon, the entire village felt her presence in ways that were impossible to ignore. The crops that the people of Umidara relied on began to wither and die, the green leaves turning brown overnight. Villagers tried to salvage what they could, but each day, more and more plants wilted, their stalks crumbling into dust. The elders held gatherings, desperate to understand what was happening, but none dared to speak the truth aloud. They knew in their hearts that they had condemned an innocent woman, and her spirit had returned to punish them all. People whispered in fear, glancing over their shoulders, knowing that Olivia's spirit was watching. One night, Olivia's spirit appeared at the village shrine, where the native doctor who had helped William in his deceit sat alone. She stood in silence, her figure barely visible in the flickering candlelight. When he saw her, he felt the weight of his sins bear down upon him. His hands shook, and his heart raced as she moved closer, her hollow eyes piercing through him. Before he could utter a word, her spirit reached out, and the air grew thick and cold. With a final scream, he fell to the ground, his life extinguished, his debt to her paid. Word of the native doctor's death spread through Umidara, and fear gripped the villagers. No one dared speak of Olivia's name, but everyone knew her spirit was not at peace. The people trembled as they went about their daily lives, haunted by the thought that she was always watching, always waiting. One night William could bear it no longer. Olivia's spirit had tormented him beyond endurance. He could see her everywhere, in the shadows, in the darkness of his own home, in the reflections of water. He felt her presence pressing down on him, her silent accusation a weight on his chest that left him gasping for breath. His guilt gnawed at him, eating away at his sanity. He could feel his mind slipping, the edges of his vision growing dark. Desperate and out of options, William stumbled out of his home, screaming as he ran toward the village square. "Stop! Stop! I will confess. Please, Olivia, spare me. I will confess everything." Villagers gathered around him, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. They watched as William, once a proud and cunning man, fell to his knees in the dirt, shaking and weeping. "I killed my own brother," he cried, his voice hoarse and broken. "I put a curse on him, something he stepped on that took his life. I wanted him gone because I was jealous, because I wanted Olivia for myself." Gasps echoed through the crowd, and villagers placed their hands over their heads in horror. The truth was finally laid bare. William's voice shook as he continued, each word like a poison spilling from his lips. "I stole the village's golden treasure with the native doctor's help and hid it in Olivia's room," he confessed. "We wanted to ruin her, to make her pay for refusing me. I wanted her to feel my pain, my jealousy, and now she has come back to punish me." The villagers were stunned, frozen in place as the full weight of William's treachery settled over them. They had killed an innocent woman, an unborn child, all because of one man's greed and envy. Murmurs of abomination, "and we killed an innocent soul," spread through the crowd. Their shame was palpable, and tears filled their eyes as they realized the depth of their mistake. Some of the elders, overcome with grief, dropped to their knees, begging the heavens for forgiveness. But William could not stand their looks of disgust and horror. Driven to the edge of madness, he began to scream and claw at his own face, his mind unraveling completely. His eyes grew wild, and foam appeared at the corners of his mouth as he stumbled back, laughing and crying all at once. His madness was a punishment in itself, a torment that would never leave him. The villagers, consumed by fury and regret, picked up stones and began to hurl them at William. Their cries mingled with his screams as they condemned him for the suffering he had caused, the innocent lives he had destroyed. As the crowd dispersed, William remained alone, lost in his madness, wandering aimlessly through the village. Days passed, and he was seen muttering to himself, his once sharp mind now shattered beyond repair. Haunted by guilt, the villagers gathered at the site where they had buried Olivia. They bowed their heads in shame, their hearts heavy with sorrow. One of the elders stepped forward, raising his hands to the sky, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Oh, spirit of Olivia, forgive us. We have wronged you, and we know now that you were innocent. We took your life and your child's life for no reason. Please have mercy on us. Let us make amends, for we will live with this burden forever." As the people cried out for forgiveness, the sky above them grew dark, and a cold wind swept through the village. They felt Olivia's presence, a mixture of sorrow and lingering anger, but they also sensed a softening as if she understood the sincerity of their pleas. The crops that had withered and died slowly began to return, new shoots breaking through the dry soil, offering a glimmer of hope to the villagers. They knew Olivia's spirit had heard them and that, perhaps, she had found a measure of peace. But Olivia's song would never fully fade. It would linger in the village air as a reminder of the consequences of envy, of the importance of justice, and the dangers of betrayal. And every now and then, on quiet nights, some villagers claimed to hear her voice drifting through the air, a song of sorrow, love, and a spirit that would never be forgotten.